May I start by congratulating you on your birthday? I believe it's your birthday today, is that correct?
It is.
Many happy returns of the
Thank
day,
you.
sir. Now, I would like to know, to what do you attribute the recent growth of the PTI and your own growing popularity amongst the people of Pakistan? Can you describe in brief for Scandinavian viewers what the PTI's aims are for the future of Pakistan?
Well, there are three reasons why PTI has emerged as one of the largest parties in Pakistan. Number one, people are sick of all the old political parties. Time and again they have ruled Pakistan, and each time they have been more corrupt than their previous tenure. And so people want to change, and PTI is seen as a party for change. Secondly, PTI's stand on the war on terror, where PTI believed that there was no military solution. Time has proved PTI to be taking the correct line. War on terror, which has devastated Pakistan. People here have realized that PTI stand that there should never have been a military solution to what was basically an issue which should never have become what it has become, where military operations have increased extremism rather than decreased extremism in Pakistan.
Why do you think that is?
Because firstly, the American war on terror was not perceived as a war against terror, but war against Islam. All surveys in the Muslim world have confirmed that majority of the population thinks it's war against Islam. So Pakistan, by participating in this war, and especially when Pakistan reversed its policy, the same Mujahideen groups which were trained by Pakistan on behalf of CIA, backed by the CIA and ISI, trained them. They were Mujahideen and heroes fighting foreign occupation. The same groups became terrorists when they wanted to fight against NATO occupation. So Pakistan should never have been having only a decade earlier backing groups like Osama bin Laden, Al-Qaeda, and they were supposed to be heroes fighting foreign occupation. And so Pakistan trained these groups. But the moment Pakistan did a U-turn, it should have stayed neutral. The moment they did a U-turn, these groups turned against Pakistan. And then sending the army into the tribal areas was the biggest blunder. It was a combination of collateral damage, bombing villages, drone attacks, Pakistani military operations combined. They created the Pakistani Taliban. So the war on terror has increased terrorism rather than decreased terrorism.
Decreased it. So,
and third reason,
sorry.
The third reason why people are moving towards Tehreek-e-Insaf is because corruption is a major issue in Pakistan. It's destroyed the fabric of a society. And the leaders of the major parties in Pakistan are tainted with corruption. They have huge corruption cases against them.
So what you're saying is that the PTI has come along to solve these problems or to give a new light to these problems, and that's why it has become so popular. Am I correct in this?
No, PTI is a reaction. PTI has grown because it's a reaction to the tried and failed political parties. People want to change, so PTI represents change. And secondly, PTI's credibility increased over a period of time in two areas. The war on terror, our stance turned out to be correct, and secondly was corruption. We are perceived as a clean party.
So how do you then attribute, what is then the reason for your own personal popularity? Because I've done quite a bit of research the last few days, and it appears that you're very popular, and I'd like to know, apart from the cricket background, what is it that's making you stick out?
I think people trust me. I'm the only politician people give money to. I mean, no other politician can collect funds in Pakistan. So I think that's a big factor, because eventually People want to trust their tax money with someone, that they will trust the money they give taxes to a government, that money will be not
Used
squandered, not used,
correctly.
thrown away, and not taken away in corruption, and then that same money will be judicially spent on the people. I think that's the real reason, why people give taxes. And people don't trust these two governments, both the centre and the provincial, the two main parties, because they don't, and people don't pay taxes to the government. Pakistan has the lowest tax GDP ratio to anywhere in the world,
Okay,
simply because people.
We're going to get to the taxes in a moment, but first I'd like to ask you that there are reported to be over 7 million members in your political party, and that would make it the largest in Pakistan. Now, how many of these are registered with the Election Commission as voters?
Well, we have 7 million members with ID cards, and the moment you have an ID card, you are registered. You can vote.
So you're saying that there are 7 million potential voters who will vote for the PTI?
Not 7 million voters, 7 million members mean you can add, God knows, 2-3 times to the vote bank.
The families and the...
Because a voter, a party member is different to a voter. Party member is committed, who is actually phoned to get your ID card and who becomes, registers to be a member. Voter is different. Voter is on the last day. A lot of people make up their minds a few weeks before the elections. So it's potentially, bearing in mind that the total vote bank of People's Party in power is 10 million, and PTI has a membership of 7 million. I think that's where I'm confident that we will win the next election.
Now, of the 200 million Pakistanis, approximately 200 million population, as far as I can see, only about 1% pay their taxes. And you've said that you intend to make them all pay their taxes within 90 days. How do you propose to do that?
That's not true. What I said was that major corruption can be stopped in 90 days. Because corruption is done by government, which is in power, by the ministers, by the Prime Minister. It's the leadership that indulges in massive corruption. All the major scams in Pakistan in the last 5 years, either the Prime Minister or the President or his ministers are involved. So major corruption in Pakistan can be removed if you have a clean government. Your cabinet minister, your Prime Minister, if they are honest, your major corruption is removed. And that's what I say in 90 days. Tax collection might take a little longer. I think it will take us a year to collect taxes. The thing about taxes, number one, people must be confident that their taxes will be spent on them. If people see the returns of the taxes, if people see a cutting down of expenditure, an austere lifestyle by the ruling elite, self-accountability, you lead by example, pay taxes first. We already have all senior membership have declared their assets, which is very important because no one here declares assets. None of the main political leaders in this country, they don't pay taxes. They hide their money.
So if, let's say, hopefully this will come to be, but if for some reason you don't manage to do this in 90 days, have you a plan B?
No. Tax collection is different to corruption. They are the two bigger issues of Pakistan. Corruption, you can hit major corruption in 90 days, and then you can have institutional checks to decrease further corruption.
Okay, but that's what I meant.
That's corruption.
Let's say the 90 days go by.
Taxes will take a bit longer because by the time you get your machinery going, the confidence of the public, I reckon it will take us a year to increase our taxation.
But let's say now the 90 days goes by, and for some reason or another, the corruption has not been minimized. Have you got a plan B?
Look, it's very simple. If your Prime Minister and your senior ministers are all honest, that's where the major contracts take place. And that's where the major corruption is. So if you look back at the major corruption cases in Pakistan, every corruption case, either the Prime Minister or the President or the senior ministers are involved. So therefore, if your cabinet is clean, That's the number one thing. Number two, you must have an independent accountability. What is called NAB, the Accountability Bureau, must be an independent body. The investigation must be independent. The police must not be under the Ministry of Interior, in other words, depoliticized. You must have a very decentralized spending of money, so local government system. So the more centralized the spending, the more chances of corruption. The more decentralized, if you spend through local governments, the less chance of corruption. So therefore, it's a combination. Number one, clean government on top. Number two, institutional checks, which we've already prepared. So that's how you hit corruption.
Well, now, I understand that you've also said that within 90 days you will be able to increase employment. Is that correct?
No.
Maybe I'm being wrongly cited, but this was...
No, 90 days. When we talk about 90 days, corruption is the number one thing. Rule of law is the number two thing. You can establish rule of law in 90 days. Employment is not, you cannot immediately improve employment. You have to create the enabling environment to bring in the investment, which then creates employment. So, you will, by creating rule of law, clean governance, giving good governance, that's what enables investors to come in, and that's how you increase employment.
Okay.
But that's not in 90 days. Rule of law is in 90 days.
Okay. Now, moving on, you have said that you propose to invite the Taliban and from the tribal territories and Balochistan separatists into the Main Street political arena. How can you make that possible? There
are two different issues, the Pakistani Taliban and the Balochistan Liberation Army, which wants separate province for them. They're two different issues. Both issues have to be settled through dialogue. Military solutions have failed. Military solutions should only be used as part of a political solution. In other words, it should be part of a peace process, and then you might have some elements that cannot be reconciled. But military operations, military solutions have failed always in Pakistan, starting from East Pakistan, 3 operations in Balochistan, the Fatah operations. They failed to bring a solution.
But if
So therefore, let me complete. So therefore, the way to bring about a peace in this area is number one. I'm talking about now the tribal area. Balochistan issue is different. The tribal area, the Taliban issue is different. The moment we disengage ourselves from the US war on terror, we will take the motivation of jihad away from the militants. The moment you take away jihad, which means that you will become a martyr and go to paradise and become a shaheed, the moment that narrative is taken away, you will not have suicide attacks, or the fanaticism of the suicide attacker will diminish. And that's when you will win the war, because and you will win the war through your own tribal people. There are about 800 to 900,000 armed men in the tribal area. There are only about 20,000 militants. So the common sense says that when the people of tribal area to your side, you win the war. You keep causing collateral damage by bombing them, it's a never-ending war, because you push them to the other side. Let me complete. So therefore, to win the war, take the narrative of jihad away, and then your tribal area people will themselves be able to control militancy, because the tribal people are very conservative, religious. They will not fight a mujahideen. But once there is no longer jihad, they are the biggest stakeholders in peace. They will then win the war for us through dialogue, and they are much more in numbers. There are far more armed men in the tribal areas than the militants, and they can win the war. But military operation is not a solution in tribal areas.
Okay. Now moving on to foreign policy, you're known to be slightly anti-US, but Pakistan depends a lot on US aid. So what's your political agenda regarding relations between Pakistan and the United States? And will Pakistan's foreign policy towards the US change when and if you become the next political leader of Pakistan?
Yes, the relationship will change.
In what way?
we will want friendship with US rather than this master-slave relationship. Because at the moment, Pakistan is being used as a hired gun, paid to fight for the US. Pakistan army is basically being used as a mercenary army. And therefore, we've destroyed our country. Almost 50,000 people have been killed, over 1.5 million have been internally displaced, and billions of dollars. The loss to Pakistan economy is almost $70 billion. So the total US aid is less than 20 billion. So this should be a lesson to Pakistan. We should never be dependent upon anyone, must stand on our own feet. Aid comes with strings attached. And most of all, aid makes you lose your dignity and self-respect. We in Pakistan want to live as a friendly relationship with everyone, but we do not want to have this current relationship where we beg and borrow for our existence.
So what's your advice to?
So with US, I am not anti-American when I say, when I oppose US policies. I oppose Pakistan's policies in the last 15 years. It doesn't make me anti-Pakistan. This is a very imperialistic view that anyone who opposes the United States policy is supposed to be anti-American. We all have a right to oppose wrong policies, and this war on terror was one of the most senseless, one of the most immoral, and one of the most insane ways of fighting a war. It has caused death and destruction everywhere in the world. Trillions of dollars have been lost to the economy of the US, or people of the US who have lost out, and it has achieved nothing because there's more anti-Americanism today. I'm not sure whether the world is any safer today, because the more anti-Americanism, the more chances of terrorism. So therefore, winning terrorism is winning hearts and minds of people. It's not through bombs. And so therefore, I oppose this policy. Does not mean I'm anti-American. And therefore, we will not want to have a policy where we are supposed to be a client state, which, where we have stooges of US running Pakistan. It won't happen. We will want an independent Pakistan, independent foreign policy, but friends with everyone.
So if you had 3 minutes with Barack Obama right now, what would you say to him?
I would say to him, first of all, to give peace a chance. Enough of bloodshed. It's not achieved anything. What have they achieved in Afghanistan? Apart from tens of thousands of people killed, people dying every day, what have they achieved? What were the aims in Afghanistan? And therefore, by owning Bush's war, he's not achieved anything. So I would strongly suggest to him that time for war is over. Give peace a chance. And Pakistan can play a big role in helping them in getting a government of consensus in Afghanistan. In other words, in a peaceful solution in Afghanistan. No longer will Pakistan participate in this bloodshed.
Okay, moving on now. What is your policy towards India, and how do you propose to resolve the Kashmir issue if you get into office?
First of all, I think India and Pakistan both have to have a completely different foreign policy to what we've had so far. We really need peace in the subcontinent. The subcontinent harbors the greatest number of poor people in the world. The time has come in the subcontinent for us to spend money on our human beings rather than on weapons. And therefore, we should decide that yes, Kashmir is an issue. The people of Kashmir have given tremendous sacrifices for their right of self-determination. We should solve the issue of Kashmir through talks, through dialogue, not through militancy or military.
But there's been dialogue for 40 years and it's not resolved.
But dialogue is the only way. In other words, we should not resort to military means or militancy.
But
it's not going to solve the problem.
How will your dialogue be different from the dialogue that has been previous?
It does. Look, either you have dialogue or you have war. War is not an option with two nuclear-armed countries. Militancy, what has happened, is also not an option because people of Kashmir have suffered. 80,000 people have died, and this military 500 to 600,000 Indian troops in the valley have caused tremendous violation of human rights, and people of Kashmir have suffered. So, in my opinion, the time has come to sit down as civilized people and decide to solve our problems through dialogue. Now, it might take time, but there needs to be a roadmap to some sort of a peace solution. And I think never has there been more need on both sides of the border. Even in India, there's a very strong constituency which wants peace now and a solution of Kashmir. And same in Pakistan, because it's an untenable situation for the Indians to have over 500,000 troops in the valley and all the human rights violations. And it's not a solution. Military is not a solution. So therefore, I think there's more chance of dialogue achieving anything in Kashmir now than ever before. There are 3 ex-foreign ministers in my party, and according to all 3 of them, actually Pakistan and India came fairly close to a solution of Kashmir.
So it seems to me that being a foreigner, that your main issue is to have peace. Peace is the word that you are actually prophesying, is that correct?
Yes, I think civilized countries...
Are you the John Lennon of the subcontinent?
No, it's not a question of John Lennon, it's just that in Pakistan we have reached a stage where half our population is below the age of 25. And unless we educate them and spend money on them, we are looking for a huge disaster in Pakistan. So the time has come to put all our resources into our human beings, develop our human resources, human capital. And if we do that, this country will take off. If we don't do that, we're looking at the abyss. I mean, we're looking at disaster. So therefore, I think it's a completely different view of how we look at ourselves, how we look at our international relations with our neighbors, for our foreign policy. And the emphasis must be spending money and looking after our own human beings, which we have neglected so far.
And then tell me, since Pakistan, since partition, the military has always stepped in at intervals and taken over power. What is your relationship to the military, and what is to stop them from coming in and taking power from you?
Well, simply because times have changed. Had the military wanted to intervene, in these 5 years was the best time for the military to intervene, because never has a government been more unpopular as it has been in the last 5 years. And never has the situation been as bad economically in every way for the people as it has been in the last 5 years, but the military did not intervene. And the reason is Pakistan has moved ahead. The thought process in Pakistan has moved on, and there's a consensus that military takeover, martial laws are not a solution in Pakistan anymore. And so therefore, we are moving towards a more democratic culture in this country, even though this government has done a lot of harm to democracy. But people in Pakistan believe that more democracy is better than bad democracy.
So what you're saying really is that the PTI is coming in as a sort of milestone in Pakistan's history and making these changes for the future?
PTI's slogan is a new Pakistan. In other words, cut off all the lessons we have learned in the 60 years, where we've gone wrong, what we should have done and we didn't do, and what we need to do now to make radical changes and reforms in Pakistan. It's what we've learned in the last 60 years, and PTI wants to capitalize on them and have a very radical reform agenda.
You said 3 fantastic words just now. You said, a new Pakistan. That would be quite a good slogan for your party, wouldn't it?
It is already. Party has already had the manifestos of a new Pakistan.
Okay. Now, as you know, I'm from Sweden, and I'm wondering, what's your policy towards Sweden, Norway, and Denmark, the Scandinavian countries? Pakistan is still using military equipment which was purchased from Sweden as way back as the 1970s. I'm referring to trainer aircraft bought from Saab, and recently the PAF purchased AWACS from Sweden in a joint venture between Saab and Ericsson's. Do you plan to continue Pakistan's business relationship with Sweden?
Well, I hope our relationship to Sweden is not restricted to buying arms from Sweden. I think what we can learn from Sweden and the Scandinavian countries is that they have the best welfare system in the world. I think that's what impresses me most about the Scandinavian countries. We really need to look at the lessons from the structure of welfare state. Obviously, the tax to GDP ratio is very high, which is why they can spend so much money on the people. But it is an ideal model where there is non-communist countries have actually done so much for their human beings, and I find that they're the most civilized societies anywhere on the planet. And I think that's where we need to learn from Sweden.
It's very kind of you to say so. Do you have any special message for the hundreds of thousands of Pakistanis living in Scandinavia? Because there are a lot, especially in Denmark and Norway, and I'm sure they're going to see this. Do you have any special message for them?
My message for Pakistanis is that Pakistan is on a crossroads. This is a great time to change our destiny. This is a time when they should all support this movement for change, because the other parties are tried and tested. They know what they've seen all of them perform in the last 5 years, whether in the provinces or in the center, and they no longer can find solutions for Pakistan because they themselves are the problem. And this is a great opportunity to vote for a party which is bringing in new ideas, parties which is the leadership is doing self-accountability, which is first having democracy within the party, by the first ever party in Pakistan's history, which is holding elections within the party, and a first party which is coming with detailed policy papers before coming into government. And I think it's time for people of Pakistan, whether living outside, links with Pakistan, and of course within the country, to vote for a change.
And one thing which is which is a great concern for people in Sweden, and recently we had the Malala case, and I can tell you that even though it was highly publicized all over the world, in Sweden it was publicized more. And therefore I have to ask you this question: how many more Malalas are there in Pakistan, and how can we do something about all the Malalas?
Well, Malala's case was particularly gruesome. A 14-year-old girl is shot in the head by these militants, Taliban. That's very gruesome. But there's so many children and women who have been killed in the last 10 years. And there's such sad stories of children being handicapped because of this war on terror. Well, fortunately or unfortunately, they don't come on the screen like Malala, which raised outrage. But just the drone attacks in the tribal areas, the number of number of children killed are 176.
But so, how do you curb violence against women and children? Because violence is taking place against women and children in Pakistan. This is something that we know. Now, what do you intend to do to curb that?
I think we need to disassociate ourselves from what is happening normally in the society and the violence due to the war on terror. I mean, the violence we have seen since in the last 8 years is unprecedented in Pakistan. It has, in my opinion, violence leads to more violence. So when you find solutions through violence, actually it increases the amount of violence. And I repeat, there's more extremism and fanaticism in Pakistan today than ever in our history. And yet this war was supposed to be against extremism. So we have to, as I said, disengage ourselves from this war and then have rule of law in Pakistan. Law protects the weak from the strong. So that's the answer in a society to get rid of violence against the weaker section of the society by having a strong rule of law.
But do you understand that we who live in the West and look in our television screens and we see people in Karachi or Rawalpindi or Lahore looking into the TV cameras with very, very angry eyes because some idiot somewhere has made a film or written or made a picture of the Prophet, and the whole Western world is aimed at. You must understand that for us in the West it's very difficult to understand. How would you intend to stop this kind of extra violence?
You're talking about blasphemy?
I'm talking about the blasphemy laws, yes.
No. There's a difference between blasphemy law and ridiculing our holy prophet, peace be upon him. You see, the problem is the Muslim leadership has failed to make the Western countries understand that we do not treat religion the way the Western countries treat. I know how in Sweden, Scandinavia, and in Western Europe, especially, religion is not treated the way a Muslim treats his religion. Muslims live their religion. So when there's something derogatory about the Prophet, or when you see films mocking or material ridiculing the Prophet, there's a very strong reaction here. And the only comparison I make is of the Holocaust. Now, Holocaust causes a lot of pain to the Jews, understandably. And anything, they will react very strongly, even if there's an interpretation of Holocaust which diminishes the pain of or the extent of the killings in the Holocaust. And so in 4 European countries, you cannot use freedom of speech to give some sort of an interpretation of Holocaust which somehow minimizes the extent of killing. Now, similarly, and I believe that the Jews are right, they should not be, because something that causes them so much pain, freedom of speech should not be used to cause them pain. Similarly with Muslims, we should be able to tell the West that these are the two issues, the Quran and the Prophet. We do not want any mocking, ridiculing of these two, on these two issues. There can be, in fact, there are a lot of interpretations in the West about the Quran and about our Holy Prophet. But it doesn't lead to the sort of protest which you see when there is a deliberate attempt to ridicule and make fun of them. So if we can make the Western countries understand that please do not use freedom of speech to cause pain to the Muslims, like the Holocaust, any interpretation causes pain to the Jews, and we live in a global village, we are part of a human community, we should respect issues that cause pain to a human community. It's our failure that we have not been able to make the West understand this.
But the West also wants the East to understand that if one man makes a film or makes a cartoon or ridicules the Prophet in some way, that the majority of people in the West condemn that, and it's actually the deed of one person and not of a whole country or whole nation. I mean, President Obama and Hillary Clinton, and even our Prime Minister, our Minister of State in Sweden, Fredrik Reinfeldt, we've all condemned this.
Yes, but I think it's always,
why blame the whole country?
I don't think it's blamed at the whole country. It's blamed at, it's when...
But it is, because the Danish embassy here was attacked in Islamabad.
It's because there was some news item here that the Danish government stood behind the person who was responsible for those cartoons, caricatures of our Holy Prophet, and the Danish government backed it in the name of freedom of speech. That's exactly what my whole point is, that this is why freedom of speech should not be used to cause pain to human beings. That's why there was a reaction. I personally think, I don't agree with these mass protests. I don't agree. I think there should be a much more civilized sort of protest. But sometimes you cannot control people's emotions. In every human society, you have liberals, you have moderates, and then you have fanatics, and what you call, in Europe, you have your racists. So every human society has these, on the fringes, you have these fanatics. And I think the racists are fanatics. So therefore, why do something which will cause anger amongst, or which will give the fanatics a way of using violence to protest? So therefore, I think the best thing is that there should be an understanding that there are certain subjects like the Prophet, for us, for the Muslim world, the Prophet and the Quran, which I don't think there's an objection to interpretation. It's where there is a deliberate attempt to mock them, to ridicule them, to make fun of them.
But I agree
That's
with
when
you.
there's a
I
reaction.
agree with you 100%, and so do 99% of the people in my country agree with what you've just said. But if one person does it, must the rest of us suffer
I don't
for
think
it?
it's against our whole thing. It's when there's a feeling that, when you have protests and violence, then, people get carried away. But I don't think in the country as such. I don't think in Pakistan we blame governments for it or the entire people for it. I don't think so. I don't blame, people of Denmark for whatever that ridiculous cartoon war, or for that matter, the whole American people for that, because most of them don't even understand what the issue is.
So that brings us to education. Do you think that education of the masses would eliminate problems like this?
Education makes a huge difference. Most of the issues will resolve. A lot of cultural problems will fall into place, which come out of ignorance. Education does change society, and I think if one thing will make a huge impact is education in Pakistan.
What is your agenda regarding education for women?
I think women's education has to be worked on emergency basis. We have the lowest female literacy in the world, and this is a big issue in Pakistan because this has several problems related to it. Because when you educate your women, you actually transform your society. And unfortunately in Pakistan, our women's education has been neglected. One of the biggest outcomes, fallout of that is that we have a population going out of control. Every research has shown that if you give primary education and primary health care, and especially education to women, your population growth rate comes down. Pakistan has a serious population issue. So that's just one aspect which is going to destroy us in the future. So female education is very important, and especially primary education, because we have over 20 million children out of school. I mean, this is criminal in Pakistan.
So what are you going to do about that problem?
Education emergency. Education must be an emergency. And when I talk about peace, the reason we need peace is to spend money rather than on arms on our human beings.
Now, many of today's world leaders are young, in their late 40s or 50s, mid-50s. This goes for Obama, Putin, presidents of France and China, not to mention the UK's Prime Minister David Cameron. Today is your 60th birthday, and I'm wondering, are you not a little too old to be taking on such a tough assignment as Prime Minister of such a diverse country as Pakistan? And it is probably going to mean taking on a lot of stress. What are you going to do to keep yourself fit? You look very fit, but what are you going to do to keep yourself fit?
Well, only God will judge in the end what happens.
Okay. Finally, sir, I would like to ask you, what is the best advice you could give to a young cricketer who has big ambitions and wishes to become a politician?
The two are not connected. What has cricket got to do with politics?
A young sportsman.
No, but what has...
Like yourself.
But I never had political ambitions. So
when did your political ambitions...
I never wanted to make a political career. Basically, there are two ways of going into politics. One is to make it into a career, which in my opinion must be the most boring thing on earth, is to make politics a career. The other is where politics becomes a mission, where you want to use politics to achieve certain objectives. They're two different things. So most of the politicians are not looked up in the world is because they take politics as a career, and so a lot of the times they have to be two-faced, they have to say one thing to the public, and they have ulterior motives, and they're not considered genuine people. But when you take politics as a career, as a mission. So you have people of greatest respect like Mandela, like Jinnah, Muhammad Quaid-e-Azam, or you have someone like Erdogan, who's changed Turkey. So, or like Mahathir Mohamad. These people are most respected because they do not do politics for some selfish reasons. They do politics for a larger objective, which is improves the lives of people. So for me, politics can be the best philanthropy. It can be the best way of doing good to masses. So you can build a hospital, you can build a school, but in politics you can make a welfare state. That's the ultimate good you can do your society.
Nelson Mandela didn't curb corruption. He didn't make people pay their taxes.
Nelson Mandela did not come on the platform of curbing corruption. He came in specifically to have one man, one vote, and that's what he achieved.
So, finally, am I to take it that you believe that your party will win the next election and you will be the next Prime Minister of Pakistan?
Yes, I think it'll be a tough struggle, but I think this is a movement which will not be easy for the status quo to stop now, because there's a mass, according to the IRI survey, 80% of Pakistanis think that we need a change. So if 80% of people want to change, clearly they're not going to vote for these tried and tested and failed parties.
So your golden word is peace.
Peace comes with justice. So our party is called Movement for Justice. When you have justice, you have peace.
And do you believe that it's possible to achieve peace in Pakistan within your lifetime?
Within my lifetime, in Pakistan you can change. The country will change within months. And as I said, rule of law, 90 days. You can establish rule of law in 90 days in Pakistan.
But
all you have to do is make sure that bring the powerful under the rule of law. Make the law equal, make everyone equal in front of the law. It's happened in so many countries. The moment you have someone who established the rule of law, you have peace. And it's only when the governments themselves break laws, that's how you have chaos like you have in Pakistan. In Karachi, the crime is being committed by militant wings of 3 major parties who are running Karachi, who are sitting in government, and their militant wings are creating havoc in Karachi. So once there's one law for the powerful and one law for the weak, you have chaos.
Mr. Khan, I wish you the best of luck, and I sincerely hope that I will be able to come back and interview you after the first 90 days have gone.
Inshallah.
Thank you very much.